He has a 1-1 count. That one struck high. Left side. That one's going. That's out of here off the lights. You have to be kidding me. Fireworks. Here you go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome one and welcome all inside another high and tight edition as we get ready to rock through our Class 1A team rankings here. And again, brought to you in part by the great folks at Victory Mounds. Check them out at victorymounds.com and RDA Financial. Both of those are our team ranking sponsors for the 2024 campaign. And I can't thank them enough for helping to bring a lot of this great content to you. And by the way, I hope you really take a lot of this content in. You know, as we have said in the past, Cade and myself, we challenge you to be a baseball fan of Iowa High School this year, and a lot to like in there. 1A is one of those classes that truly has a lot of intriguing storylines as well. We saw a lot of fun, especially when it came to state tournament last year. The energy, the excitement, man, there's so much to like about what we will end up seeing in 2024 as well. So again, Cade Nissen and myself, Andrew Brown, we're going to go through our rankers list of the top 15 Class 1A teams as we dive into, again, what their year was like and some storylines that we're looking at here. So a lot to like. This was a class that gave us quite a spin last year, for all the way from teams like GMG and beyond. This was something where you got to the postseason and it was the wild, wild west. And so certainly I thought what better way to commemorate that than with a gigantic hat, which is also some of the best PR that you can ever get out there. I will say that because our last guest that we had on High and Tight, Ben Zobrist, mentioned that. He said so. So I'm going to take his endorsement. I'm going to take that as an endorsement, and I'm going to say it's time for the big hat to come out in 1A.
I love it, Andrew. I got my hat on, too. My hat's not very big. But no, Class 1A, shaping up to be a ton of fun. I don't know the number off the top of my head, Andrew, but last year's Class 1A state title game, I bet, had the most combined starting seniors of all classes. Remsen and Lisbon, two teams with absolutely loaded senior classes. So consider the door opened in my eyes in terms of who's going to be that next team to step up. Is it going to be Remsen, Lisbon, one of those teams competing for it? Or are we going to have someone else that wasn't competing for a state title that's going to be hoisting it at the end of the year? Let's get to some quick announcements before we get rolling. Opening day, May 13th, super pumped. Again, Iowa Baseball, your number one spot here in the state of Iowa to cover anything and everything going on across the state. Comment your squad, Class 1A fans. We want to see who we're reaching, who we're not reaching. Comment your squad. Let us know you agree, disagree with these rankings. Obviously, I know most of you are going to disagree. We can't make everyone happy, but we're having fun bringing you guys some entertainment. And our preseason practice too, we're excited to get that going. Started off in City High. Today, you're watching this. We're going to be in Sadell. DM us at Iowa Baseball or Andrew and I. We're going to see what we can do to get down to your squad, get you guys some pictures, some video, and just overall some love. There's a ton of programs that deserve it, and I wish I could hit them all. I'm going to do my very, very best to hit as many as I can this summer. Let's get into it, Andrew. We're breaking these up into the little quadrants. If you watched our other classes, we're going to start with 16 through 11, our Class 1A ranker, threw in a bonus one, number 16. So let's get rolling. 16 through 11. Class 1A, I consider this the season being officially underway because we get to put those little numbers by the teams now. So we get a really,
this is kind of like spring training here.
Kind of.
This is our spring training tour that we're doing here, and again, everyone can follow along with that. But yeah, this is Iowa's spring training right here. That's what I think.
Well, let's get into it. 16 through 11 in Class 1A. It is right in front of your screen, as you can see in this little quadrant. All 6 of these teams, Andrew, won 20-plus games last year. And actually, if I'm looking at it, every single team in the preseason rankings last year won 20 games last year. So it's a pretty good benchmark. Starting off with South Winneshiek, a quarterfinalist last year, and a team that loses a lot. They return Carson Strieger, younger brother of Keegan Streeter. But bottom line is Southwind losing a lot. 16, I think, is a good spot for them. A lot of question marks yet for this squad right here. Moravia coming in at number 15, 23-8 last year. They returned Throckmorton and McDaniel in the box on the hill. Throckmorton and Helmick looking to lead the way for them. At number 14, Gladbrook Rhinebeck, 25-12 last year. They're another team that graduates a good chunk. Their top five hitters, depart. And on the mound, they also lose William Kiburis. He had 130 strikeouts last year. That's a tough loss for them. Some question marks for them. They do return some guys that are looking to contribute in the box, like Drew Ellers and Isaac Clark. At number 13, North Lynn, 26-5 last year. Really good year for North Lynn. Didn't end up in a state tournament appearance, but nonetheless, 26 wins. They do return Mason Beacon. He hit 418 in the box, and he led the team in innings pitched. He's going to be looking to lead the way for the Lynx. At number 12, Alta Aurelia, one of my personal favorites in Class 1A, 22-8 last year. And this team, they lose some guys, but they return some big pieces in Gavin Sleezer and Cale Breckwald. You can throw Evan Peterson in there as well as a sophomore last year. They're going to be a fun team to watch in the Warriors. And rounding out this little quadrant we got here is Bishop Garrigan, 24-7 last year. They returned Justin Bauer and Keaton Hellsteth. Those guys hit well in the box last year. Also, Drew Lappy, he hit 388. Bishop Garrigan, another team, they lose their top 3 innings guys on the mound, though. So the Golden Bears looking to solve some questions on the hill. Andrew, 16-11, I just ran through a lot, but what stood out the most to you?
I think one of the things that stands out a lot are, I guess, teams that aren't quite there, that aren't even in the list. I talked about Kingsley Pearson, Lisbon. They're not even on the mark just because of all the individuals that they lost. But one of the teams I think is going to make the biggest jump, Alta Aurelia. I think I love it. They've got a really good self-sustaining program over there. You mentioned them, the guy Breckwald. I think he's been on our list. He's been on our underclassmen team, all underclassmen team as well. So he is a guy that is gonna, I think, again, another year in, already 2 years at least of him leading and just kind of having a good presence in the varsity roster. I just don't see them going down very much. This is just tough because this is a group where you got to have teams that did really well, like Bishop Garrigan, obviously really well. Southwind did really well, but there are also teams that lost quite a bit. Southwind loses almost everybody. North Lynn does lose some pretty good guys, some British star power as well. Bishop Garrigan, like I mentioned. I think Alta Aurelia is really the team that loses the least amount in terms of what they can put back into production. So, I think that if anybody's going to make a big push out of this group, I would say them or Moravia. I like Throckmorton a lot. I think he is a guy that has a lot of potential to do a whole lot more at the next level. And and I've talked to other people, scouts, that think the same way. So I think he is that team. Alta Aurelia, Moravia. I like Gladbrook Rhinebeck. They do lose a good chunk though. Northland as well. But I like if anybody out of this group, I would think to make the biggest jump, I think it would be Alta Aurelia.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a trend as we see, Andrew, through each of our rankers. This 16-11, this 15-11 is a lot of teams that the rankers just aren't sure about. Preseason team rankings are really, really tough because when teams lose a lot of seniors, it's hard to know what guys that were sitting on the bench last year are ready to contribute and which ones, aren't. So I think that's a tough spot. And so I think 16-11, I like all these teams here. A lot of teams that we've still yet to learn about and teams that, you're going to let grow into the top 10 if they're ready for that. So hopping into the top 10, though, I think it's a common theme, actually, that we've got some teams inside the top 10 that we still got question marks on in Class 1A. And starting off with Newell Fonda, they're losing their top 3 hitters. They do return Mason Haberman. He hit 337 last year. Ty Tauber, he also hit well, 350. And on the mound, Tauber is going to lead the way. Max Carlson, he's going to lead the way. He threw 50 innings last year, and he was their bona fide ace, but they also lose their next two guys. So another team at Newell Fonda that you're going to be looking for some new contributors. Moving on to West, Harrison last year, they were 23-4, only 4 losses for the Hawkeyes last year. They lose their top 2 hitters, 2 guys that had 74 and 59 total bases, respectively. Mason McIntosh looks to lead the way for them. He hit 417. And on the mound for the Hawkeyes, their top 2 innings guys are gone too. So a really common theme so far in Class 1A is teams with some question marks. Moving on to another team in Galen Catholic. They were a quarterfinalist last year, Andrew, but the Jays, that they're pretty constant in Class 1A, but they're also looking for some new contributors. 4 of their top 5 hits leaders are gone, and even on their mound, their top 4 innings guys depart. So it's just keeping up as we're creeping up into this top 10. We've yet to see a team that's really, I'd say, replenished and full of returners. Hopping down to St. Ansgar, they were a quarterfinalist last year. St. Ansgar, they're a team that I'd say this is the first team where we're really seeing a squad return a true platoon of guys in Schweisau and Powers and Sparrow and Mullenbeck. All those guys hit above 300 last year. That's the first team, and we're at number 7, where I think I've seen a good core of their lineup returning. And on the mound, they also returned Schweisau, Balland, and Walk, who all threw 27-plus innings last year. Schweisau, he's going to be the name to know for St. Ansgar last year. JC was 9-1, threw 49 innings, and had an ERA below 1. So he's going to be a big name in Class 1A this year. And rounding out this little pod is Don Bosco. The Dons, they return Frost and Knack in that lineup, but they lose McMahon, Purdy, Youngblood, Ortner. A team ranked very highly at number 6. The Dons are always competing in Class 1A, and you know they will again. And even on the mound, they lose their top 3 innings guys. So looking for some new faces here. Andrew, which of these teams do you really like in this little 10 through 6 section?
Man, the 2 teams I like the most, I'll say, are Don Bosco and St. Ansgar. And I will say St. Ansgar, they have 6 guys with 20-plus hits returning. They have quite a bit of experience on that mark. And again, it's really tough. All these guys, remember, most of these guys, I should say, know several different instances of taking down the giant known as Newman Catholic. We saw that several times across the last couple years, right? And they took them down at their height when they had guys like Max Burt, Douglas Taylor. And I think Newman's still going to be a juggernaut. They're still going to be a really tough out when it comes to anybody facing them. But St. Ansgar has found the key to winning against this program, and last year they had some very, very strong games, very strong wins overall. I mean, you go up and down the mark. Yes, they did lose 1 game to Newman Catholic. In the end, they beat them when it count. But, they went through and they put up 30-plus runs in the first few legs of the postseason, all the way up until they got to the state tournament, right? So, and the Newman game was 2-1, but they did not give up a single run up until then. So they have and they bring back, you mentioned the pitching that they've got back. So St. Ansgar for me is kind of that team, but I do also like Don Bosco. I really do. We saw them put up 18 runs against Newman Catholic last year, early on in that season, but we saw them really rock home really a strong season. I like Don Bosco. I think that they have a lot that's going to end up going very far. You mentioned Frostnock and all those guys. I think that they make for a good combination of what we're going to see to be, honestly, I think, as one of the teams that have the biggest jump here. I thought last year they kind of just they obviously losing out to BGM and all. What a story that was. And unfortunately, it was a story because Don Bosco had to be the team that ended up falling there. But again, you like what you see out of Don Bosco. Again, I think those 2 teams are going to be the teams that end up doing kind of the most damage. And I mean, honestly, Don Bosco had, if I'm not mistaken here, I think if I had to give the offensive edge, I think maybe Don Bosco to them. They had the one of the highest run differentials positive on a positive mark than any team across that scene, across 1A at 7. I mean, you had other teams like Linville Sully at 7-7, according to my notes anyway, but you didn't have as many teams overall up anywhere near that. So you go ahead and look at the mark. I think St. Mary's was the only team to hit 8. So you get into the 7+7 run differential, which Don Bosco did. Therefore, they're one of my 2. So I think, honestly, those 2 teams are there. But again, I'll go with my preseason, some of my real favorite teams to watch out for, and that is St. Ansgar. They're going to get my nod here.
Love it. Speaking of a team, Andrew, that's from my neck of the woods, entering our top 5 here. A team we both liked heading into the postseason last year. It is Coon Rapids Bears. Now they lose Clayburg, but they return Culbertson. They return Hayden, who's coming off one of the best years from a freshman hitter we've seen in a while. He was a huge impact maker. He was a part of our preseason list. Coon 25-5 last year. They're becoming a mainstay in Class 1A. They have been for a while. I think this could be a year where we see them make it to the state tournament based on what I'm seeing so far. I really like what Coon Rapids Baird brings back.
Yeah, they do bring quite a bit back, and again, a lot of offensive there. And again, I know that we go ahead and highlight a lot of the guys that, again, you've already mentioned some of the big guys that have really stepped up and made some big names. But I think this is a team that's going to really kind of come around. I mean, ultimately, Hayden comes back as in his sophomore year. I mean, he's already going to expand upon 43 hits and 86 total bases, one of the top marks of all freshmen in 1A. But again, this is a team that has a lot of firepower to come back, and they're just getting more experience. They have arguably a legendary head coach in their own right, but when you look at it, they bring back 3 of the top 5 hitters, and ultimately, when you look at it, 2 of the 3 guys who had 20 or more hits, including Hayden and Culbertson, they come back. Then you just got guys that are just kind of getting more experience under their belt. I think that's why you end up putting them in this position and not higher, because ultimately you see a lot of these teams have guys with 20 plus hits. We mentioned a team, Don Bosco and more, bring back, St. Ansgar bring back 5 or more 20 plus hit guys. And what you're bringing back in terms of 20 plus hit guys is 2, right, for this team. Not saying that they're not really effective. I mean, in the end, this team had 13 home runs last year, and they had over 20 total extra base hits just in triples and home runs alone, let alone the 39 doubles. So I think this is the right spot. This is the prove it spot. They are now in that rarefied air that they can say, yeah, you are a top 5 team, but now you have to continually prove it in order for us to say, yeah, you can stay here. And again, is our say gospel? No, by no means. I'm actually getting more to the point, Cade, where I'm happy if I'm proven wrong. Right? I not like I want that to be my mantra. I don't want that to be consistently what goes on with me. I'm going to be honest with that. But what I do see is, again, the chance for this team to do a whole lot more than what we've seen already. And again, last year we saw them come just so close of making a deep run as well. I think they kind of got upended just a little bit. But again, Mount Air is just a strong team, right? This is a strong team to be able to go up against. And so, again, I think that they run the tables this year. I think they do a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, no doubt. Moving on to number 4, it is Linville Sully. Now, one of my favorite teams to follow all year in Class 1A last year, 29-2, semifinalists. They fall out of the state tournament on a really, really tough call. But this team's back, and talk about another team kind of reloading and ready to go. They do lose some pieces. I mean, Connor Mason, he's a tough guy to lose in the box and on the hill. But they return Cordernown Harder, who I say he'd be a nominee for our all-name team. They return Landon Montgomery, and they return younger brother to Mason, Carson Mason, as a sophomore. Those Mason brothers, they were a pretty nasty 1-2 punch last year on the hill. So they lose one of them, but they bring back Carson. He gets another year under his belt, his junior year. They bring back Lucas Seek. He threw 35 innings last year and contributed. Linville Sully, they were like I said, one of my favorite teams to follow in Class 1A last year. They find themselves at number 4 here. You said 5 was a proven spot for Kuhn. I think Linville Sully has proved it. I think it's just a matter of going and doing it again.
Yeah, again, I felt like, man, they got like a little bit gypped last year. Again, I know things ended up the way that it may, but I will say, looking at here, I mean, they bring what 4 to 5 guys. Look, ultimately, they had 10 guys of 20 plus hits last year, and yes, they bring at least 3 good guys. You mentioned Matson as well. I really want to say let's look out for Van Wyke. I want to say, I'm sorry if I butchered that name. And Wyke, and also Seek as well. Downharder obviously going to be the big push for that. Montgomery going to be as well. But this is a team that truly, in the end, they bring back a lot of good and total bases as well. Some big guys as well, as they bring back at least 3 guys with over 30 total bases. So offensively, to account for that, Mark, yeah, they have quite a bit in that returning send. So I like them. This is a chance where I think that they can just expand upon. I do think this is kind of that make or break a little bit, because you're seeing a lot of juniors, including non-harder. You got guys that had the chance to make the biggest impact, and I think now is the time that you go for it. I think it is kind of that make or break year for them, just because, again, we know what 1A does, right? 1A, you can be just like what we saw with Kingsley Pearson, with Lisbon. You have guys that have reached up. You have such a hardcore senior group, and then that goes away, and now you're going to have to start with guys who haven't had as much experience. So I think 1A, you get a lot more of that disparity. But yeah, I don't agree. I say I do agree. I don't disagree with where they're at here.
You talk about Linville Sully losing Mason. He's a big loss. I would say, though, Newman Catholic at number 3, they lose a really, really tough 1-2 duo in Burt and Taylor, but they return some big pieces too. And I feel like people just look at Newman Catholic, they think of Burt and Taylor departing, but you got guys like Gage Peterson, you got Andrew Fitzsimmons, Cal McGuire. This team has some pieces outside of the big guys leaving that is reason to be excited for them at this number 3 spot.
Yeah, I truly think that if you're going to have a team that has been kind of the epitome, again, they've won. Oh man, ever since since before they joined, since they joined the conference, they have been obviously they've been the conference number ones. The top of Iowa has been kind of theirs to own for the last decade, and again, the guys that they have had on have been the guys that have made that happen. And again, another guy I want to really touch up on, you mentioned as well, Cal McGuire, and I like him for his offense. Obviously, 35 hits is a big thing, but I really like him for his defense. And I also want to say Toby Keston is another guy. By the way, you look at it here, and you have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys deep, and you're still at 31 from last year. It's 31 hits total, which is absolutely astounding here. But Keston is a guy that I think you should watch out for, getting more time and other experience. He's going to be he's going to be the guy that I think really pushes along. I really like him. I like Fitzsimmons, and I like Peterson. So what do I see? I see a team that truly deserves to be that number 2 spot. I just would like to see them get to the point back when we were at Principal Park, right? That was when Newman was just constantly back to back. They're always in the mix. I don't remember seeing a sophomore, and I remember for Newman, forget his name, but I remember seeing a sophomore jacket out of Principal Park, and that was Newman. And I asked guys, and they go, "Oh, that's just Newman. That's Newman Catholic." So this is a team that I would like to see, Cade, have that postseason success like we've seen in the past. Unfortunately, for most of the era of the Max Burton, Douglas Taylor, we didn't see that, right? Because two times out of the last 3 years, we have seen them upended in before the state tournament. and then we saw them when against New London. Just I mean, just the wheels fell off right there, and that was unfortunately not the way we wanted Newman Catholic to end up. So, boy, I think this is the year for them. Unfortunately, that without some big powerhouse guys, but I think they need to show us again, what they can do in the postseason, because we've seen constantly 10 plus years of them owning the top of Iowa conference. And I'd say both sides, they've been kind of the best team on both ends of the divisions. But I think that this is time to not only go that, but a step above that. I think they're ready to win the title this year.
No, I like it. Uh, Obviously, Newman Catholic losing Taylor and Burt, it's a big loss. Transitioning to our number 2 team, that couldn't be any different. We've got Burlington, Notre Dame at number 2, Andrew, and these guys, they're kind of like the Underwood of Class 1A. These guys
Yeah.
lose hardly nothing. Now they do lose their ace on the hill, Hunter Shipley, 58 innings, 8 wins, 57 Ks. He's a tough replacement, but in terms of in the box, they return everybody. And outside of Shipley on the hill, they return everybody. Burlington, Notre Dame, they were quarterfinalists last year. I think that was key. I know they didn't make it as far as they wanted to, but they made it. They got that experience at Merchants Park, what it feels like to prep for a postseason, a game at the state tournament. They got that under their belt. You want to talk about a team that's ready to go and get it, like you said for Linville Soli. That's my team here with Burlington Notre Dame. I like them at number 2, and I think you could easily make a case for them being number 1 preseason.
Yeah. And, again, with the mark that they had last year going up, beating Moravia, as we talked about, a strong team, and Hillcrest Academy, which you have mentioned as a big team to watch out for. They went through that. They went through arguably a tough postseason stretch just to get there. Now, again, I think that I'm with you. Burlington Notre Dame is again that team, but with better jerseys, right? I think. I'm sorry, I'm not harping on the jerseys. The shirt jerseys, obviously,
they're
rock.
T-shirts.
Yeah, I like the T-shirt jerseys. I'll rock those any day with you guys. But what I love about this is you go down the line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You go 10 deep, and you still haven't had a guy that you lose out. You didn't have a senior in the top 10 in terms of hits last year. Brent being the guy I think is going to lead this. He did obviously pace the world for them in total hits, total bases as well. But Schwenker is a guy that I'm sorry if I messed that name up there, but I want him and I want to say Hebrichter, the junior and the freshman combo from last year. Those were 2 of 3 guys that had, 4 guys, 2 of 4 guys, including Kip and Brent, that had 10 plus walks last year. And that just means a lot for me, because you get guys on base, especially in the 1A ranks, where you can get guys that just steal bases left and right. And again, as we saw last year, I mean, base running was obviously pretty huge in 1A. But you get guys on base, you keep getting that on base count up. Again, that's what I think Burlington Notre Dame is what we are going to see out of that. And you got guys that are experienced in that, which is, again, experience is key, especially when it comes to high school ball, I guess, across the country, really. So, yeah, do I like them there? For sure. And I would say they're my second. Yeah, man. If I had to say most confident and second most confident in terms of number 1, ranking them number 1. And so our this was a hard one for our ranker to do, I know for sure. But yeah, this would be kind of my second easiest by a slim margin. Newman Catholic is obviously a tough out as it is, but yeah, I agree with them. I agree with them here, and I like it. I think that this is going to be a fun year. And again, I will note that any one of these teams could be interchangeable here. Burlington Notre Dame deserves a number 2 spot. I think that honestly, you could argue them for number 1. But well, again, we'll continue to move on with that number 1 spot.
Well, yeah. Speaking of that number 1 spot, Andrew, fun fact: we went backwards. We started with 4A, 3A, 2A. 1A is our final class we're recording, and this is the first time that our reigning state champ is coming in at preseason number 1. That's Remsen St. Mary's. And they've got an interesting story. And now that I look at it, they got a nice balance of returners. I feel like everyone sees Ortman leaving, Bunkers leaving, Schroeder leaving. They've got some guys ready to come back and ready to help lead this team and ready to compete for another Class 1A state title. Hunter Pick, Colin Homan, Landon Waldschmidt. There's a big three right there. I mean, you kind of look for that big three to lead the way, and there it is. They do lose a lot of seniors. Fish is a big loss. But even on the mound, you got Homan. He's going to be your rock, your ace. He had a .41 ERA last year in 50 innings. He's going to go out and he's going to get you wins. He's going to eat up innings. You also got Pick on the mound. He only threw 18 innings, but he was really, really good in those. He struck out more than two guys an inning in his 18 innings. So spoke to the total depth of Remsen St. Mary's last year that he didn't throw more. I mean, that's a good thing when you got guys just ready to platoon. But now Hunter Pick, it's his year to kind of step up on the mound, get more innings, and that could be a pretty dangerous 1-2 in Pick and Homan in Class 1A. So I feel like people might see Burlington Notre Dame and see what they bring back, but I'll play devil's advocate and say Remsen St. Mary's deserves this number one spot, and they're ready to put the target on their back and ride into 2024.
Yeah, I think this is something that we've gone through again. Again, I look at a lot. What was the I've mentioned it before. Pedigree. What's happened prior to the last season and beyond? And Remsen St. Mary's again. I grew up. I grew up playing in that conference. I grew up playing in a mix where you would go there, and Remsen St. Mary's, they would always be the team to beat. They would always be the team that you don't want to face, the team that would most likely to 10-run rule you every single time. And coming out of the War Eagle, they have been at least over the last 5 years consistently, 5+ years, they have been the conference champ. And they at least at the very top. I want to say going beyond that without seeing deeper notes from me here, but yeah, I do like it. And you mentioned their big three that they bring back. There's the three guys that had 30+ hits on the year last year. So you got volume with that, and what you can do is you can even space them out. So hey, you find some young guys who can step up, get on base, and then you got your big dogs to drive in. That's really quick. One of the things that Remsen St. Mary's did quite a bit last year, when you take a look at all it's said and done with their schedule, is they're one of the best teams in terms of top four, the first 4 innings, making big run production, right? This was I mean, honestly, this is a team that had a lot of fun last year through the 8th toughest schedule that 1A had to offer again. And they, as I mentioned before, the only team to have a run differential 8 or above in class 1A, and they ran the tables. And 21 wins within class. That is something there. Ultimately, they had 13 dominant games, which I believe by bound standards is at least 6 runs or more. I want to say that. Ultimately, their schedule had how many games of double-digit runs? And in fact, looking at it, they had multiple stretches of 4 games with at least 10+ runs scored anyway. All right. And that included early on trying to get into the postseason, but that included wins over Galen Catholic 11-1. Western Christian as well. They beat Don Bosco, as we mentioned. Akron Westfield is another big team to mention out there, but they've had some really big wins, including over 3A's Webster City early in the season. So when just a sliver of that, I think, can go a long way. And again, I will say right here and right now that they have been here before. We've seen this happen. We've seen it play out once, twice, 3 times. We've seen it play out a lot of times. I remember back in the Andy Steichen days. That's a big name around the War Eagle Conference, but they've been there. They've seen that. So again, 1A, I think at number 1 easily sets there. Again, everyone out there, what do you think? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you want it to be kind of a mix here? Anyway, we kind of like to be, I guess, upset a little bit in some of our thoughts, but our rankers really go into a lot of depth with this. And again, rankings brought to you by Victory Mounds and, of course, RDA Financial, our team ranking sponsors here for the 2024 season. But yeah, any thoughts and more? And by the way, you could have gotten in all of this well ahead of time with all of our thoughts and more. If just make sure that you go to Rockfin, subscribe. The best way to support us is we support the athletes, coaches, and players, and even umpires. I will say umpires with that as well. So a lot of fun there. And Cade, I think we got a lot of fun coming on up with our preseason tour. So check that out. Again, anybody out there, let us know. Hook us up, hit us up on whether it's social media or iabaseball with the number 1 at gmail.com. Email us. If you want us to come out, you want us to do something there, we'd love to be there. If you want us there, we want to be there. We want to be there regardless of if you want us there or not, Kate. I should have said that. Oh, but
that's a perfect way to wrap up today, Andrew. We've been recording these classes for a while. It's all running together. We're running out. But yeah, Andrew, thanks for joining me. Thanks for having me on High and Tight. Class 1A fans, check out High and Tight next week. Whether we're talking about rankings, we're gonna be talking Iowa high school baseball, whether it's rankings or not. So we appreciate you for joining us. For Andrew, for myself, Class 1A fans, I'll see you plenty this year. Andrew's going to see you plenty this year. And like we said, just become an Iowa high school baseball fan this summer. We're excited to have you from everyone at IA Baseball. We'll see you next time.